Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We continue our investigation into a military gone woke. The quest, of course, is to turn our fighting force into a giant social experiment. The result is a military more divided and then less prepared, as every branch of our military focuses more on racism and so-called tolerance than they do battlefield theory. We are now discovering more about the lengths the Pentagon is going to push this woke nonsense. Why don't you take a look at this? The Navy is quietly rolling out a program called Task Force One Navy, and part of that program forces sailors to pledge to, quote, commit to all lived experiences and intersectional identities. It sounds ridiculous on its face. It even recommends contractors sign this inclusivity pledge. Navy Admiral Michael Gilday is the man who commissioned the task force. Here's a Navy video talking about it.
His goal for the task force: to identify barriers of inequality and improve inclusion and diversity within the Navy, ultimately increasing readiness and warfighting excellence.
Well, a brand new report from a former Navy admiral and retired Marine general casts serious doubt on our fighting forces' readiness. It's no wonder after watching that last video. This new report is explaining that the Navy is simply not focused on war and only focused on, quote, racial diversity. In the report, a recently retired senior enlisted leader states, quote, I guarantee you every unit in the Navy is up to speed on their diversity training. I'm sorry that I can't say the same of their ship handling training. It's all pretty stunning, really. And we would be naive to think this is just happening in the Navy. In fact, we know it's not. This report reveals what nobody in this country wants to hear. Our military is slowly becoming to a point where we're not going to be ready if our enemies come calling.
Woke politics. They're endangering our military and our nation, folks. And it's Truth Thursday here, and the Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube and X Spaces simulcast. Well, don't give up the ship is the rallying cry for U.S. Navy warriors that was born in a battle to the death by the USS Chesapeake in the War of 1812, and it's the name of a new book we're talking about today. So listen up, Americans, and I'll quote from it. The warning signs are obvious. Our freedoms and our nation itself are under siege. We face unprecedented circumstances. Russia and China's expansionist ambitions pose an existential foreign military threat. At the same time, we are facing a significant internal challenge as every fissure from social media to election integrity to our national borders are being exploited. Here's another quote. We're locked in a struggle for the soul of our nation. They effectively expose the insidious but very real threats to our military's readiness and our nation's unity. That's from Brigadier General Chris Petty, who's a board member at STARS. You'll remember STARS. I'm an advisor on their board. The Stand Together Against Racism and Radicalism in the Services that the Air Force Academy graduates started several years ago. Well, these comments are from the book wherein 17 former military officers of what's called the Calvert Task Group, most U.S. Navy Academy graduates, apply their insights that have been shaped by combat, by command, and by senior leadership experience. And they illuminate the divisive threat of woke politics that has infected our military. And it's attacking the foundation of our nation. Showing these initiatives endanger our security They urge readers to stand against the crisis and defend the principles that have made America strong. The fate of our country is in the hands of the American people, and the time to act is right now. The Calvert Task Group was formed in 2021 as an association of U.S. Naval Academy alumni, led by members of the class of 1969 to address the changes that are being wrought on our military by woke politics. Well, my guest today is one of them, and we've been having some technical difficulties, but we may have him. He's retired Lieutenant Commander Bruce Davies, a Navy Academy graduate from that class. He's a former Navy fighter pilot, a former Blue Angel. We only send our best fighter pilots to fly in the Blue Angels. And Bruce, if you're there, welcome to the Rob Maness Show. All right, well, we don't have him yet, but we will go to our audience to see if they've still got us over there. We're having technical difficulties everywhere today. Shell, are you still there?
Yes, sir. There was a slight pause in audio, sir, but you are back.
Outstanding. Well, we're having some technical difficulties getting our guest on here, and the producers will continue to try to do that. But take a look at this book, Don't Give Up the Ship, because it's very interesting. It's over 360 pages, but it's essays written by these men that have organized the Calvert Task Group to defend the U.S. Naval Academy initially against wokeism and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And when we get Commander Davey on, we'll talk to him about some of the essays he wrote in it, because I think he wrote 3 or 4 of them, but also the reason for the book itself. And one of the idea to do this particular show came to me from a Navy mother who is here in Mississippi. I was sitting with her a couple of weeks ago at a dinner, and she turned to me and asked me about wokeism in the Navy. And I asked her, she said, "Is it real?" And I asked her why she was asking me that question. Well, her son apparently works at a very high level as some kind of assistant to one of the top 2 naval officers, or recently did. And that he had told her that he'd never seen it. It didn't really exist. I told her about this group, and then I learned about the book just a week later. So providence is good. Divine providence is even better. And I think God put that mom in my way to have that conversation. So when I got the email talking about this book, I would know right away that we had to get the show on the air in order to get this information out, because not even a Navy member or a Navy mom really fully understands what is happening in our military. And that opening clip, folks, was from 2021. We are now more than halfway through 2024, and the report that was referred to by the Admiral about the Admiral and the Marine Corps General assessing the readiness of the Navy was from that year. Last year, the Heritage Foundation did another readiness report for all the services. The Air Force came out the worst in that report, with the biggest readiness drop that has been seen. But the other services also have been affected in a negative way. So that readiness level, or lack of readiness, continues to decline as we go through time. And we're now in the face of, and you've seen it on this show many, many times, the face of the main adversary, the People's Republic of China, led by the Communist Party. They have built a Navy that outnumbers our own. They are seeking regional hegemony, in other words, to dominate the power structure in the Pacific. They are seeking to dominate the power structure around the world through something called the Belt and Road Initiative, where they go into a country, they're usually poor countries, and they offer to build them runways, airports, ports, deep water ports, and they basically give them a loan to do it. But the rules are, if you default on the loan, that infrastructure becomes the property of the Chinese Communist Party. You see how that works? So they're going into these very poor countries, giving these loans, building this infrastructure, and it's almost always infrastructure that could be used by military forces like navies, air forces, armed forces, land forces, and those kinds of things, so that the People's Republic of China will have power over those pieces of infrastructure that they built, and ultimate power if those little countries default on them. That's called the Belt and Road Initiative. So the threat of the Chinese government is real to the United States and our allies. Russia is now part of it because of poor decision making on President Biden's part that has pushed Russia further into the arms and into alliances with China. That's why you saw just a few weeks ago Russian Air Force and Chinese Air Force strategic bombers penetrating what's called the Air Defense Identification Zone in Alaska and Canada. Now we're used to seeing that from Russian bombers. It happened all the time in the Cold War. It's less frequent now because they have less money and less forces, but it's still not unusual. But what's very unusual is that Russia and China would be able to plan and execute a formation of strategic bombers to do that together. That means they had to do the planning. They have to have what's called interoperable equipment like radios and those kinds of things. They had to take off from somewhere. The Chinese generally don't come all the way up to our ADAs because the distance is so great. So they had to take off from somewhere, likely in Russia. So they deployed Chinese bombers, more than likely, launched them and flew them as a flight together, and then brought them together into the Air Defense Identification Zone. And that's the first time that's ever happened, and it's a big, big indicator. Well, Shell, if we have a hand in the audience, I'll go ahead and take a question. I guess they're still working the technical difficulties with the guest.
We do not, sir.
Well, that's surprising because this audience is very talkative generally. And I will be very surprised that they don't have a question. But that's okay. The president.
Oh, Chris has raised her hand.
Oh, good. Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, good morning, Shell, Colonel. You're talking about all the stuff that's going on with the wars and things like that. It's getting very dangerous out there, and a lot of times I get scared. And I was just wondering, what can we do? What can we do?
Well, first of all, just before you asked your question, I was going to start talking about President Trump's press conference. I was watching it before we came on the show. And one of the things that he was addressing was the weakness that the United States is portraying now on the international stage. And that invites adversary nations to take actions that they wouldn't otherwise take because it's not risky for them to take actions. And that's why you see all of these wars starting all around the world because the United States has not been projecting power. It's been actually intentionally projecting weakness. So the number one thing we can do right now in this span of time is make sure that you buy more guns and ammo, you train, have your families trained, coordinate and talk to your closest 5 neighbors and make sure everybody understands what they need to do in the event of an emergency, of some type of crisis that could affect your security, your water, your food, and your power. Because we can only, in the end, we have the power to take care of ourselves and the right to take care of ourselves. So that's the extent of your personal power. But there's another thing you can do. Get to work for the Trump campaign. Go to Trump Force 47 and sign up to work on that at Donald J. Trump's website, because that is the avenue that the Trump campaign is using to work its get out the vote efforts, and it's coming all the way down to the local level. So if you sign up for that, you will have an opportunity to conduct activities to get out the vote for the campaign. Because if we don't elect Trump this time, have you seen what Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are going to do? We'll talk about that on the way back in. Hopefully we'll get the guest up after this break. We'll be right back on Worldview Tube, the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHouseBG.com.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We continue our investigation into a military gone woke. The quest, of course, is to turn our fighting force into a giant social experiment. The result is a military more divided and then less prepared, as every branch of our military focuses more on racism and so-called tolerance than they do battlefield theory. We are now discovering more about the lengths the Pentagon is going to push this woke nonsense. Why don't you take a look at this? The Navy is quietly rolling
efficiencies. There's a ton of things to change over there, no doubt about it. But number one, we got to find out who made these bad decisions. We need warriors over there. Our military is supposed to, their job is to deter war, and when it happens, kill people and break things, not train people on this woke stuff that is tying up our time. We got ships colliding in the sea, and a 3-star admiral made a report on it that it was because there wasn't time to train on what they really need to train on. Instead, they're out there worrying about this woke stuff that's being taught not only at the academies but throughout the force.
Back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and we're talking about the U.S. Navy Academy graduate group, the Calvert Group Task Force or Task Group that has been organized to take on wokeism, like you just heard about in the first clip, and in the second clip, that's one that's in time on the timeline, very close to the first clip, and the gentleman's talking about Navy ships colliding out in the Pacific, and we had a ration of those. So think about this and what the status of readiness is in 2024 as China grows stronger, Russia grows stronger, and the United States just shows more and more weakness. Well, I think our guest is ready. Retired Lieutenant Commander Bruce Davey, former Blue Angel pilot, fighter pilot, an airline pilot, I might add, and a great writer. Bruce, welcome to the Rob Maness Show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you on, my friend. It's good to see you again, too. So the book, Don't Give Up the Ship. First of all, just tell us a little bit about the Calvert Group and go into why you guys organized. I know the story, but my audience hasn't necessarily heard the story.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. The Calvert Group is named after James Calvert, who was the superintendent at the Naval Academy when we were there, and he was a hero in World War II, a submariner, just like my father, who was also a submariner, Silver Star awardee, and the first guy to surface underneath the North Pole, and the third submarine to transit the North Pole, but the first one to surface there. And he had great influence on our lives as a superintendent of the Naval Academy, and was the sort of person that we wanted to be like when we graduated and we continued our lives. And as time progressed and we went through our careers in various ways, shapes, and forms, we had the opportunity to see how to operate in a military warfare environment. And then most of us were in the class of 69, a good number of us are in 69. There are a whole bunch of classes that are now represented, but the beginning of it was a class of 69. We were approaching retirement age, and the things were not, we were operating in the way that most retired people operate, which is looking after grandchildren and enjoying the golf game and things like that. And some events took place that caught our leader, Tom Burbidge's eye, and he alerted us to these things, and we started talking about them and saying, well, what's going on here? And that was the beginning of the Calvert group. We checked with the Calvert family to make sure that they were okay with us naming our group after Admiral Calvert, and they said it was certainly all right. And so that was the beginning of the Calvert group.
So I'm excited about the book, Don't Give Up the Ship. I actually titled the show using the subtitle that's on the cover of the book because I think you guys are right. Woke politics is destroying our military, and it's endangering the nation. So let's dive into the book. It's an extensive work, a lot of essays in it. I think you wrote 3 or 4 of them. But what's the gist of the framing of the story from the book's perspective, and take us up to where you think we're at today in this mess?
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to do that, and it's an interesting deal. If you think about it, "Don't give up the ship," of course, is a quote attributed to Captain James Lawrence, who was a naval officer in the War of 1812, and was mortally wounded and in a battle on the USS Chesapeake, and he was battling the HMS Shannon in June of 1813. And when the last words he said was, "Don't give up the ship." And he was saying not to let the ship sink. What we have contributed and continued on that thought, in that the ship can be sunk, it can be taken by hostile hands, by being boarded and captured, and the end result is that the ship is no longer yours, that you're not running the ship, and that it's in enemy hands. When you think about it from a naval officer's standpoint, the ship is your home, but it is also your life. If you lose the ship, you die. And that's the essence of what we're talking about here. Don't give up the ship. The parallels in our lives are that we're seeing the United States of America in a desperate situation where if it sinks, the populace of the United States, as we know it, die. Our life changes radically. The America that we know goes away if the process that is taking place within our government right now continues. And just like in a fighter squadron, if you are not paying attention to what your enemy is doing, he may have a tactic that you're not aware of, and you're going into battle without the proper preparation for how to defend against that battle. And that's what the Calvert Group is interested in doing. We want the average person in America to understand what is going on within our country. And we're taking what is our most important asset, our United States military, that is unparalleled in human history, in power and in strength, and we're degrading it, and we're degrading it from a whole bunch of different ways. But the primary things that we've seen right out of the chute are critical race theory and diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, where the very anathema to military operations are taking place. Within those two concepts, there is divisiveness and a splitting of the cohesive aspect of a army or a team or a squadron. And that's what we're pushing back against, is that sort of thing. But not only are we pushing back against DEI and CRT, but there's a philosophy behind that that is counter to the American way of life, the way that we think in America, and the way Americans think, that we think that anybody can achieve, that anybody can be successful. And it isn't because the government is handing us that, it's because the individual is able to do it. And that's what we see in the military, that meritocracy takes place. The good man succeeds. The average man stays the same, and the poor man disappears from the ranks. And in combat, that's how people wind up dead or successful, is you have meritocracy that puts the good leaders at the top of the pyramid. And I've talked on a little bit longer than your question asked, but I hope you forgive me.
That's okay. No, that's okay. So, I think that's a hard one for the average non-military person to understand, because, the Navy's not alone in that. I've talked about the need for trust and to build a team based on merit so that the very, very best are rising to the top, not just to lead, but to also operate in these systems that we field in our infantry units. If you're in the Army, your armor units, your ships, the Marine Corps, all of it requires individuals that are willing and incentivized to perform individually at their very, very best and constantly try to improve, because that's what makes a team that trusts each other implicitly enough to go into battle and die for each other, right? That's what we're saying.
I agree with you completely.
Is that what we're saying? This destroys that culture.
Absolutely. And, the skipper of a ship he has to instill within his personnel what is necessary to accomplish the mission. He has to instill discipline. He has to train his folks for command. He has to foster a teamwork atmosphere that enables the successful fighting of a ship. And that goes for a platoon, a boat crew, a squadron of aircraft. He has to use his assets well and provoke confidence in his leadership within his crew. And within the military, we have to have that. If we don't have that, it's not like you lose a game. It's you lose life. I draw the parallel when I've talked to young people about where do you want to go to school, or where do you want to do after you get out of school. And I say, if you're in business and you're unsuccessful, then you may lose $1 million. In the military, if you're unsuccessful, you're dead or you've had other people killed. And the concept of using some of the principles that adjust things in the military that are used perhaps in the civilian world it's not appropriate. And if you look at America right now, when I use a parallel with a ship, and you say, okay, well, what is the ship supposed to do? It's supposed to be able to project force. We haven't been particularly good at projecting force these days. We have to keep the safety of the ship available. Well, we've run aground. America's run aground in a lot of ways. The leadership of America has run us aground. Financially, we've been run aground. We've been boarded, which is what as a ship person, you don't want anybody coming aboard your ship. We've all seen the battle scenes in old school square rig ships, but the same sort of thing is true in the modern age, where you can't give your ship up to somebody else. And we can't find young people that want to go serve in the armed forces. And why is that? I believe it's because there are plenty of young people who want to do the things that we wanted to do when we were young, which is do exciting things, exceptional things, dangerous things, if it will be. And there are plenty of people that want to do that. But when we disincentivize those sort of people from joining the military by some of the concepts that are being advertised within the military, then those sort of people turn their backs on it. And we can't have them turning their backs. We need those people. We need the people that are willing to jump into the fire and save the baby. There are lots of people. It isn't an old generational thing that only World War II people can do that. The modern day warriors do that too. And
absolutely.
And to be a warrior, is what a lot of people want to be. They want to be warriors, and yet we disincentivize that end of things.
Absolutely right. Well, we got to take a commercial break, Bruce. When we come back, we'll see some training video clips from the Chinese Armed Forces, from the Russian Armed Forces, and then one from the United States Navy to start our conversation off right after this break on Worldview Tube, talking about Don't Give Up the Ship, of the Calvert Task Group's book that's talking about and taking on woke politics, destroying our military and our nation, with former Blue Angel pilot Bruce Davey. We'll be right back.
fraternities is out of control. Wait till you see this. Time-honored hazing ritual.
Kind of following orders of your immediate superior.
It was disciplined for refusing to submit to the secret code of violence.
When you come to the military, you're supposed to be beaten for the first year of your service.
Hi, my name is Johnny, and I use he, him pronouns.
Hi, and I am Kanchi, and I use she, her pronouns.
And we're here to talk about pronouns.
What is a pronoun? A pronoun is how we identify ourselves apart from our name, and it's also how people refer to us in conversations.
Using the right pronouns is a really simple way to affirm someone's identity. It is a signal of acceptance and respect.
Don't do drugs. If you're doing it, stop it. Get some help.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and we're talking about the book Don't Give Up the Ship, written by a group of U.S. Naval Academy graduates that are calling out the woke politics and how they're endangering our military and our nation. This group is out of the United States Naval Academy. STARS is originated out of the U.S. Air Force Academy. There is a group from West Point, the U.S. Military Academy. That's the Army's primary school. And there are other smaller groups from the Coast Guard Academy, Merchant Marine Academy out here that exist. And my guest today is retired Lieutenant Commander Bruce Davies, a former Blue Angel pilot, a U.S. Navy fighter pilot, airline pilot, understands what it means to be hired into a meritocracy, be trained at the highest levels of performance, and then go out and do those highest levels of performance in order to get these sometimes dangerous jobs done on behalf of America. And Bruce, those little training videos there, just to describe it for those in our Spaces audio simulcast, the first video was a Chinese Navy video showing, muscular men out there practicing self-defense and how to and wrestling inflatable boats in the ocean. And the second was a Russian military men training video and how they need to follow orders. And then the third one was a U.S. Navy training video about pronouns and wokeism. And it's not a joke. And there's a young American man at the bottom of the screen watching these three videos, and his facial expressions are priceless. So you got to go catch this when the show comes out if you didn't watch it as we were broadcasting it live here. Well, Bruce, that it's kind of funny. You can smile about it, but it's deadly serious where we're at right now. That is not a brand new video, but it's this year, that Navy video. I think I saw it this year, So the readiness that I started this show, you weren't on yet, but the clips started from the 2021 and have worked their way through the timeline. And this is probably 23, early 24, those training videos. And if that doesn't bother people in America, I don't know what they're thinking. I really don't.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you know, when you break down the military, the plans and what you have to accomplish within the military, and then you say, how do I train for this? You don't have a lot of time to do it. And if we spent winter training in the Blue Angels going through pronouns and how to deal with the intersectionality within America, you wouldn't have any air shows. I know that. And if you did that when you're preparing to land fighters aboard aircraft carriers at night, you instead of flying field carrier landing practice on ashore, you spent time having lectures on wearing high heel shoes for the young men, so if they get a chance to feel how that feels, we wouldn't get anywhere. And the same thing would be true with the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs. If they did those sort of stupid things in their training, they wouldn't be very good in football. So we're emphasizing totally inappropriate ideas, and we're spending time, precious training time and assets doing things and training things that are totally inconsequential within the battle space. And I would also say that they're not needed. The military, as you know, Rob, is probably the most diverse and without any racial bias of any place I've ever been. I mean, no one ever says, oh, gee, my wingman's black, white, women, gray, green, yellow. He says, is my wingman going to check my 6? Is he going to be able to handle what's supposed to go on? If I lose my radio, is he going to be able to bring me back aboard the ship at night? That's the kind of stuff you think about, and that's all you think about. You don't think anything about what their personal makeup is or anything else. And so it's an absurdity. And the last thing, the next to last thing, I guess, is that who are you attracting? We're not attracting people who have a knife in their teeth and are ready to roll. Nobody, when high school football coaches are recruiting guys to play, they don't say, okay, look, you're gonna, if you come out for football, then we're gonna teach you how to dance. No, they say, you come out for football, you're gonna be a tough guy, and you're gonna be the toughest guy here, and that's what we're gonna teach you to do, and that's what we want in our military. Everybody wants that in your military. When you throw the guy out in front of you that is going to protect you in real life, you don't care what he looks like or whether it's a she. You care if he can get the job done. And that's where we're wasting assets doing things that are ridiculous.
Yeah, and I got to bring up Tim Walz, the new proposed VP nominee that Harris picked the other day, and in the news the last 48 hours, his military record. Nobody's denigrating his military record. He served for 24 years in the National Guard, but it's the using for his political gain in his political career some he probably sees as nuances, but really they're outright embellishments and lies and those kind of things. But the worst part about it is that trait that we're talking about of we want the person that's got the knife in their teeth, that's eager to go, not from a talking badass about it, but from an acting perspective, that's highly trained, that's focused on the combat mission, that is totally confident in their teammates. That's the traits and culture that we're looking for. And this DEI and wokeism trains people to do what Tim Walz is being accused of, which is he ditched his unit as the command sergeant major in a battalion right after he found that, they got a warning order to go into an Iraq combat deployment. And it was at a time during the surge when it was the heaviest fighting going on. And he left on short notice to the point where he had to take a demotion. And then he lied about all that. And he's lied about being in combat and carrying M16s in combat and war and those kind of things. That's the opposite of what we are trying to teach people to be, which is lean forward, be highly trained, have total trust and confidence in your teammates and your leadership. And that leadership has got the knife in their teeth and is ready to take the fight to the enemy. That's the only way that we can even build a deterrent back up against countries like China, so that we don't have to go to war. And one side that advocates for these woke policies is presenting a man as a veteran in their top ticket that has the opposite traits. It must be that those are the traits they're looking for, because that's what they're designing as they go through this. Am I wrong on that?
You know, I'm afraid that I'm guilty of complete and utter ignorance on that topic. I'm up in Idaho right now, and I just got back in, and I haven't followed the news the last couple of days, so I don't know. I haven't heard any of these things, but certainly some of the points that you bring up are perfectly clear. I remember talking to a lady at our church one day, and she was questioning certain aspects of the military, and I said, if your son John has been captured, what do you want with the guys that go after him? Do you want that tries to rescue John? Do you want a hugely diverse group that has one of each category that somebody has come up with, or do you want just the guys that are ready to lay their lives down to bring John back? And you don't, and they don't care anything about their teammates except that they'll do what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it. And of course, her answer was, to get John back, I want those guys. And the average citizen feels that way. We're not deceiving anybody here. The average person wants the cop on the beat to be the guy that protects them. They want the best guy in the fighter cockpit. They want the best guy leading the platoon. They want the best guy leading their son into combat, and their daughter, if that horrendously comes to place. So we're foolish if we think that sort of thing is important in the military. It isn't important. What is important is competence, desire, ability, and strength of purpose. And that's what the Calvert Group is advocating for. And then the leadership within our military needs to get back on course and say, this is what we're hunting for. And I'm not convinced that there aren't some good moves that are taking place. Some of the things that I've heard, and this is not an advertisement for anything, but I've heard really good things about some of the changes that are in the offing at the Naval Academy. That the new superintendent is going to try and put meritocracy back on the table, and you got a couple of SEALs in there that if they're operating like the SEALs that I know, then we're in good shape. But we have to have that within the political sphere as well. The military in the United States of America is subject to civilian control, and if we have civilians that are apparently dead set on wrecking America, then we're in trouble. And we have some politicians that are clearly doing things that are bad for America. And if we wonder, is that true? All we have to do is look at what is going on in America, where we have a border that is totally unsecure. And when you read the histories of nations throughout time, the sovereignty of a nation is dictated really beginning the absolute baseline premise is that you define your borders and protect them. And if you can't do that, you're not a sovereign nation. And we are slipping out of the roles of the sovereign nations because of that.
Yeah, we certainly are. Well, let's take a question from the audience. The live audience. Shell is my host over there. Shell, go ahead.
All right, we have Bishop, sir.
Yeah, I was wondering, so I got in 2001, and prior to that I was affected by Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any timeline in there where the a marker where the military's gone to the pronoun woke? Is there a timeline leading up to this major breakdown?
It's a good question, Bishop. Did you hear him, Bruce?
Yeah, I know that there is a specific time when we said, well, there's no more don't ask, don't tell, and I can't give the date of that. And frankly, that's an aspect that is that plays both sides. You say, don't ask, don't tell is no good. You can't operate that way. And it seems to me like that's exactly the way we should be operating. We don't care. We don't care at all what your background is or your thought process is. If you're a good soldier, if you're a good sailor, if you're a good Marine, if you can fly your airplane well, if you can go into combat and defend the people on your right and on your left, if you're not fearful, if you're not a coward, if you don't run, if you stand up with your friends, if you fight the good fight and you're willing to die for your country, it doesn't make any difference where you come from. We want you in the military. We want those sort of people.
Yeah, that's one of the after effects of the repeal of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I think is it put us on a slide down to where we're at because we stopped focusing on what you're talking about. We don't care, and now we're to the point where tax dollars in the military have to be used to do sex change operations to put people together based on what they want that are not really physically and mentally capable of deploying worldwide under the standards. And that's part of the crux of the issue there. Bishop, I think the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell was part of it. When I left the military in late 2011, the letter from the Air Force Chief of Staff hit the wing commander's desk that said, you can no longer talk about your religious beliefs. Only the chaplains can do that. And you shouldn't be even going to church on base. Basically, to the base chapel is what the word we were getting there. But that's when I got out. And I think that the issue is that once all of those things took place, now the government force people, the trans ideologists and those kind of things, feel free to use government force to make me use the pronouns for a person that I know is a man, and change my belief. That's where we've gone wrong. And people don't trust each other in the military anymore if we're training them under critical race theory, right, Bruce? You got to have total trust in each other. You mentioned that in the list of traits that you just talked about. You have to be able to fight right next to each other and not care. And that's being eroded, right?
Well, it not only that, but there's a disincentive aspect that is really terrifying in that if you are using race or gender or something to push people along a particular leadership path or promotional path, then the competent person that is of that ilk is looked on by others as, well, the only reason they're there is because of fill in the blank policy. And so it's a disservice. One of the finest pilots that I knew at United Airlines was a woman, and she was the sort of woman pilot that you just wanted to be like. You wanted to have the operation that she had. You wanted to have the attitude that she had, and so she was a perfect example of, hey, you don't need to say, well, we're going to hire 50% this or 50% that, or we're going to promote 50% this or 50% that. You take the good people, and then that good person encourages other people to be like them. And that's what she was like. And And when my daughter was in college, I said, I'd like her to meet this gal, because this is a woman that you should pattern yourself after. She was in a man's game at that point. There were not very many women at that time in the airlines, and she just did a spectacular job, and I was always so pleased to be around her and learn from her.
Yeah, what you're describing is the real strength, which is we're able to build unified teams that implicitly trust and love each other enough to go out and die for each other in spite of all of our diverse backgrounds. I mean, that's the right there.
That's a key element. And when we talk about diversity, there's nothing wrong with diversity, but diversity isn't the thing that you should be deciding on. I mean, it'd be like saying, well, I like yellow tennis balls. Okay. And so that's the decision-making process of how I'm going to play tennis. No, you're going to play tennis using a forehand and a backhand, and you're going to develop your stroke. And the color of the ball isn't going to make any difference at all. And when you start focusing on something other than that, you lose track of the things that are really important. And that's what we've done with it. Diversity is a good thing to have, as long as the person is just as competent as the person next to them.
Yeah, it's all about the policies of hiring and training. It's an advancement. It's merit, regardless of what you look like or your background is, and those kind of things. Well, Bruce, you wrote 3 or 4 of the essays in the book, I think. Tell folks what you focused on before we get to the end of the show, because it's coming fast. And then we need to talk about how to get the book.
Well, the ownership of my essays in the book when I read the other people's capabilities, I think to myself, you're a pauper compared to them. And so it'd be shameful for me to talk about my essays when there are people that have actually some really good ones. But the idea behind the Don't Give Up the Ship is a vignette, a whole bunch of vignettes of individual pictures that have been taken in their careers and their thought processes, and then comparing with what is going on now in America and what went on in their lives and what they saw in their combat and non-combat experiences within the military. And those are revealing sort of things. And they're not just for military, they're for other people too, because those concepts that work well in the military work well elsewhere and have shown over the centuries to be successful components of life. That's what makes businesses good, when businesses focus and set goals and then bring up the people that are the best and make them powerful and strong. And then those powerful and strong people lift up the people beneath them. And as we always said in the military, you're training your replacement. The famous, or I think famous book, One Bullet Away, which is you are one bullet away from command when you're a Marine. And that's what the military does. And I think that's what we believe that America should be. It has always been that way in the past. America has always been a place where, and that's the history of it, that the pauper can come in and rise to great power and strength and riches because this is America. And he didn't do it on the coattails of the government. He did it on the power and strength of his own personality and integrity.
Yeah, and the U.S. Armed Forces has always been a place where, especially in the 20th century and the early 21st century, it's been the place where a kid like me, the son of a master sergeant, number 3 son of a master sergeant at age 17 as a high school graduate, could come in and finish college multiple times and become a full colonel and get the command units and take young Americans to fight our enemies and those kind of things. I mean, that's what it's all about, and we can't lose that. And I appreciate you guys writing this book. So how do folks get the book, and will you be sending copies to all of the Department of Defense leaders and the president?
That's a good point. We haven't discussed sending it to the Department of Defense leadership, but the book comes out on the 18th of September. and it can be accessed through Amazon and the normal sort of processes. And if you go on the Calvert website, Calvert Task Force, Calvert Task Group website, then you can order it through there too. And I would add that, you mentioned your background, and just for those people, and there are probably 5 total that are in this category because it's coming up on school time and they're enjoying summer otherwise. But the Naval Academy made me into what I am. It prepared me for life, and it made me into a person that believed in honor. Where if I say this, I did this, or I didn't do this, that you can take it to the bank that that's exactly what happened. And that's what we in the military believe is the essence of it, is that when someone says this, you can write it down as being true. And if you make a mistake, you admit you made a mistake, and you stand up to the consequences of the mistake. And Lord knows, I've made plenty of them, and I'm proud to say that in the vast majority of cases, I've owned up to the mistakes that I've made and learned from them. And that's what we do in the military, and that's what we want people. We want people like that. We want to grow American strength, and the young people that are willing to jump into the fire and do the things that are valiant and warriorish. And I've never wanted to be the president of General Motors or something. I always wanted to be a warrior, and I'm thankful for having had the opportunity to be one.
Well, we're thankful for you, sir. Thankful for the Calvert Group and all of the Americans that have served with you. And likewise, God bless you. Thank you for coming on and spending some time with us today. And keep up the great work.
Thank you. The Lord be with you.
God bless you, sir. And God bless the United States of America. I'll see you Monday. It's more War Monday again. Unfortunately, someday we'll be able to change the theme of that day because we'll get a president back in place that believes in peace through strength instead of endless war policies. I'll see you Monday on Worldview 2.